Communities throughout Central Australia have protested about the state of their housing conditions. In Santa Teresa, households are taking unprecedented legal action against the government to force them to carry out long overdue repairs on their houses.
Ernestine Williams has lived in Santa Teresa all her life and says her house has never been this bad. So how long's that been like that for?
That was same for a year.
Over a year?
Yep.
There are leaking taps, damage from floods, bowed ceilings and broken windows. She says she rarely hears from the company tasked with maintaining the house, and conditions are seriously affecting her family's health.
I just get worried, for him. Yeah, might get sick again.
Lawyers have now taken unprecedented action, filing a class action style proceeding against Territory Housing.
3/4 of the community of Santa Teresa that have put in claims to have their repairs and maintenance fixed in the required timeframe according to the Residential Tenancies Act.
Lawyers say legal action seems to be the only way to get a response from the department.
And the department is actively working with the contractors to action and finalise all outstanding works as soon as possible.
It's not just here in Santa Teresa that Indigenous residents have raised concerns about their living conditions, and Alice Springs Aboriginal Council also has similar concerns. The Tungunjera Council took their fight to the steps of Parliament today. They're demanding an independent inquiry into why the government awarded the contract for managing tenancy in Alice Springs town camps to private company Zodiac instead of an Aboriginal community housing group.
Public housing failed 10 campers for the last 5 years. It's only going to get worse under Zodiac.
The Housing Minister says Zodiac best fulfilled the requirements of the tender, including Indigenous employment. Shuba Showreel, ABC News, Alice Springs.
A program aimed at training young Indigenous people to work in the pastoral industry is leading to full-time work on cattle stations across the top end. The Pastoral Real Jobs program has been running for around 8 years and is proving so popular there aren't enough places for the number of young people wanting to join. Shuba Showreel reports.
These keen cattlemen are mastering their craft. 20 young Indigenous students are taking part in a program aimed at getting them workforce ready.
They've been working on some basic horsemanship. We've been educating weaners, riding motorbikes, doing some fencing and welding.
The program also teaches young people how to be leaders in their community.
The vibe out here is really good. We're not only teaching them skills that they need for working on a cattle station, but also developing their confidence levels.
Students come from some of the most remote parts of the Northern Territory.
Lots of our guys at the moment are coming from communities like Kalkaringi, Minyuri, Dumaji, Borroloola. We've got some guys from Timber Creek and Katherine, so they're from all over the top end.
Brenton Gregory and Kiam Foster are teenagers with big ambitions.
My grandfather owns a cattle station, so I might be managing that place one day.
How about you?
Yeah, I got a little property at home there too. Might want to manage that one day.
They say living on the land will keep them out of trouble.
You get away from trouble in town, like fights and stuff. Get in too much fights, probably end up drinking your life away.
I want to be a role model to my community and let young fellas look up to me.
The students in this course have already secured full-time work in the pastoral industry. They'll go on and work at cattle stations across the Northern Territory. Shuba Showreel, ABC News, Alice Springs.
Aboriginal leaders say the federal government must act now to address what they describe as an epidemic of Indigenous suicides in remote Australia. The crisis is most acute in the remote Kimberley region of Western Australia, where a 10-year-old girl recently hung herself. The first National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Suicide Prevention Conference has started today in Alice Springs. Reporter Shuba Showreel is there. So, Shuba, the situation is described as an epidemic. How bad is it?
Ros, on average, over 150 Indigenous people die by suicide each year. That accounts for 1 in 19 Indigenous deaths. So this conference is significant. It's completely Aboriginal-led and facilitated, and it's the first time it's being held. It brings together Indigenous leaders, mental health experts and academics from across the country. And it's hoped that ideas will be exchanged, new information will be exchanged and new partnerships formed and alliances made. And Indigenous suicide used to be a taboo subject for Indigenous people, but it's no longer the case anymore. So it's really Aboriginal people driving the conversations here.
And who exactly is taking part?
We've just heard from Indigenous elder Rosalie Kenneth Monks, and tomorrow we'll hear from journalist Stan Grant. This morning we've also heard from Federal Indigenous Affairs Minister Nigel Scullion. He appeared via video link from Canberra, and he's been a big supporter of this event. In fact, the federal government's put $300,000 towards this event. There's also people here who've been directly affected by suicide. There's a busload of kids who've come here from Leonora in Western Australia, and just in the past couple of months their community has been rocked by a spate of youth suicides.
And Shuba, the conference has just started, but what's been the focus so far?
The big focus has been on healing. As I mentioned, a lot of people here have been directly affected by suicide. So this morning there was a smoking ceremony and welcome to country, and there's a large contingent of counsellors here and traditional Indigenous healers. So the driving message is that, suicide prevention for Indigenous people is about acknowledging their culture.
Thanks, Shuba.